my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo. Where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and today on the show, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I kind of, like this week was thinking like, oh, what do I want to talk about on the podcast, and nothing was really coming to mind, and then I was flipping through TikTok, and I randomly just came across a clip, and it's kind of like a generic question, right, that the guest was answering. It was from another podcast. I wish I remember what it was, but it was the question that was being posed was, what advice would you give to your younger self? And again, nothing necessarily groundbreaking, a question I'm sure all of us have heard on a podcast at one point or another. I was trying to reflect and think, like, have I ever been asked this question when I was a guest on somebody else's show? And I can't recall. I'm sure I have, but it really got me thinking. Like, I literally was like in my car yesterday, and I was just like answering this question to myself as if I was being interviewed. And I kind of wanted to just share a bit of that. I think also I'm in a bit of a gratitude and nostalgia kind of feel right now. We just finished up our Just Be Social Club, the cohort that we had for the last year. So last week was our last mastermind meeting for that group. And as I've mentioned on the show, we're now having the Patreon, which is open to anybody. I had a few people DM me to get the link. I appreciate you. Just, again, at DJ Dramos on Instagram, literally all you have to say is link ? And I'll send it to you. It's free for now, so get in there while it's free for now. But I'm putting a lot of resources and energy into it right now that I'm really excited to share with everybody. And what we were talking about, though, in that last meeting with everybody, I kind of wanted to just take a second and have everybody in that group reflect on the last year of their life, right? And where they were when we had started meeting up and where they were or where they are right now. Because, you know, and I'm not turning this into an ad, I promise I'm going somewhere with this, but I personally, from the outside looking in, looking at these people and having met with them one-on-one, you know, throughout the course of the year and met monthly via the groups and things like that, I could see the change. It's very obvious to me. And what's ironic to me is in my conversation with a few of them, it almost took me acknowledging that for them to stop for a second and say, oh, shit, you know what? I am a different person than I was last year, or I've grown, or my mindset's different, or I'm in a different place. I've achieved a bunch, whatever it might be, right? And I think as human beings, we're moving through life so quickly, we oftentimes do not take the time necessary to just reflect and think about how far we've come and appreciate just how far we've come, right? And I think that's probably a huge source of many of our issues, of our lack of happiness and fulfillment, and our inability to truly feel gratitude on a very deep level. I think a big maybe part of what we're missing is that lack of reflection, right? And I think it's not all our fault. I think we're trained to always be like, what's next, right? And I hate that fucking question. I get to ask that question all the time, and I think I've vented about this before, but like, I hate that question, right? Because we're just trained to say, oh, you've accomplished so much, you've done this, what's next? And it's like, this is why many of us keep chasing the next shiny object, and are always caught up in this never-ending hamster wheel, and why a lot of people who have found success and money and all the things that they dreamed about continue to hoard it and chase after the next thing, because that's what we've been trained as like a society, as a culture, as human beings. Like, what is next? What's the next thing for us? And I think we have to learn to slow the hell down, right? I think so much of why we lack gratitude is oftentimes because we haven't taken the time to just sit back and reflect. And again, this is the tough part because there's a time where you can't rest on your past wins. And then there's a time where you have to also reflect on the journey and appreciate it. And only you can know where you're at, right? Where you need to do more of like, foot on the gas, or more of like, let's pull over to the side of the road and just like decompress a little bit. This reminds me of like, I literally, when I get home from a gig, oftentimes like DJing, I sit in my car at like 4 a.m. and it takes me a minute to like just get out of the car and walk into the house. Right? Like I need to like decompress from the energy that I was just a part of. That whole ride of, the party and the music and people and the energy of it all. I need like a second before I can like continue on with, getting myself ready for bed. I need to just sit there and decompress, and not even like necessarily doing anything or thinking anything specifically. Oftentimes I'm just like mindlessly scrolling on social media. But I think it's a great analogy for our lives. I think we oftentimes are moving so quickly and having to worry about so many things, especially as an adult, especially as you get older and you have more responsibilities. You're just moving, and we're not taking the time to just also reflect, which I think is just as important as action, right? You need action, but then you also need to reflect on all that's happened so that you can properly assess where you are and where you need to go, I think, right? And I think one of the greatest things is taking a moment to reflect on where you've been. And I think even as you get older, and I mean, shit, I don't care if you're younger than me, if you're older than me, the same age, it doesn't really matter. I think there's lessons to be learned that we all teach each other. And I think for me, I kind of want to reflect back on how I even got here and talk to my younger self a bit. And by the way, the advice to my younger self could be applied to somebody who's older than me, right? Like wherever it finds you in your journey, it's never too late to apply these sort of lessons that we can learn along the way. So I think that's kind of the basis of what I want to talk about today. I'm just going to kind of riff. So we'll just basically have, one long Mi Gente segment. So without further ado, let's get into it. Mi Gente. All right. So, I guess the question at hand that launches this entire conversation, right, is what would I tell my younger self, or what advice would I give my younger self, right? And I think there's different phases of me, right? I think I had already talked about this a couple episodes ago about like younger version of me was insecure and was kind of the runt of the pack and never felt good enough to be there. It was always felt like he was trying to prove himself, right? So I think I've already talked to that version of me a bit. But the version of myself that I really, that comes to mind when that question was posed to somebody else, and then I sat in my car answering it, the 20-something-year-old version of me, and again, I don't care if you're 20-something listening to this, if you're 60-something listening to this, I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of lessons that we haven't learned regardless of our age, right? And some of us have learned them at different points in our lives, and it's never too late to learn these lessons, right? So don't just like mentally tune out because you're not in your 20s. I think there's still lessons to be learned. I mean, I can go off on a whole, tangent about like, I think learning doesn't discriminate basically, right? There's so many things like I have conversation with my dad and I'm like, man, he just doesn't get it yet. Right. And I'm like, and my dad's a brilliant man. He's experienced a lot of life. It taught me a lot, obviously. But there are certain experiences that I have had where I've learned something that he still hasn't yet figured out. And, through our interactions, we break down those walls. But just, I guess, as a case study as to what I'm talking about. But, me reflecting now in my 30s, reflecting on 20-something-year-old me, 20-something-year-old me was or is the person responsible for why I'm sitting here right now. the sacrifices that version of me made and the work that he put in really, laid the foundation, the building blocks to get me to where I am today. I mean, honestly, probably 17-year-old me through my 20s. And I think the biggest lesson, like when that came up, the initial thing I thought to myself was like, man, the thing I would say to younger me is to value the journey just a bit more. And I know that sounds a bit cliche, right? The idea that the journey is like the real win. But I really do genuinely believe that. I've said before that I think like goals are merely flashlights to guide us in the dark, or to illuminate the path. But the path is really what is of value to be seen, right? The goal just allows you to illuminate the path so you can see it. And I don't mean to talk in too many like, analogies here or fables. But like me having a goal, let's say my younger goal of being a successful musician. Now, I didn't realize that goal specifically, right? I had success as a musician. I did some cool things. I didn't realize the goal to the way that maybe I had strived for. But what I did get as a result of setting that goal, I got to travel the country. I got to meet some really incredible people. I got to be surrounded by creatives. I got to learn about all aspects of the entertainment industry. I got to become a creative beyond my wildest expectations, beyond just music, but everything. I learned about myself. I found community. And while I didn't achieve that goal, going off on that journey, that goal led me to this goal that I'm living right now, which is far more aligned with what makes me happy than that goal of a traveling musician would have been, And when I reflect back, right, because, my industry is changing a lot, the entertainment industry, radio, and all these things, it's not the same. And I sound like the old guy in the room, right? And I reflect back on this even in radio when I'm talking to some of like the younger kids who are on like our street team at iHeart, where they like set up all the events and things like that. And I go on them DJing and I'm just like BSing with them. And I'm like, man, you guys, it's still fun, but you have no idea what it used to be. And by the way, I hear that from previous generations prior to mine, where it was even more fun. But, it's far more corporate, it's far more consolidated, far more of a niche industry than it once was. But like I had so many fun experiences, right? And yeah, I was broke, and yeah, I was tired, I was beaten down and depressed at times and frustrated. And unfortunately, why I say I wish I enjoyed the journey a bit more, while I had fun, I really, like, looking back, I'm like, man, yes, things were not perfect, but you were in some really cool fucking situations and fun moments with friends, right? You got to experience and like peel back a part of life that most people don't get to do, right? And I think what also got me on this train of thought was, one of my DJ friends who I've known from radio for a while, his girlfriend sadly passed away last week, and I was at the funeral, and I was driving home after the fact, and she was young. She died of cancer far too young, in her 40s. But I was reflecting on it. I was like, man, 40-something's really young, to lose that battle, right? But on the flip side of it, I was thinking to myself, like, man, because of the journey she set out on. I think she used to work for iHeart originally before I was there, which anybody not familiar, that's the company I have my podcast with, a big radio company, an event company. And her longtime boyfriend, my friend is a DJ, obviously doing that, got to go to a lot of cool events, travel and do all these different things. And, as tragic as it is for anybody to lose their life at any point in time, I was like, man, what a blessing. Like, she really got to squeeze so much out of life as a result of like this path that was set out upon, right? And, you know, in reflecting on that, I was then thinking about like my own journey, because I was a part of a lot of those memories as well with them, you know, and it was a reminder, a beautiful reminder of how lucky I've been, how blessed I've been to have the experiences that I've had. And we're all blessed, by the way. Like, I'm not saying you have to go into the entertainment world and to experience life. Like, we've all had those moments of being blessed, of like where we really were squeezing the most out of life. And if we haven't, we have the opportunity to do that, right? That's what I think I'm getting at more than anything, right? If you have had those opportunities, like, really savor them and be grateful for them. And B, if you feel like your life, you haven't really been squeezing the most out of this thing called life, now is the time, right? Because, you know, for me, it's like, all right, so this is what I reflect back on, right? I guess is like what I'm, you know, sort of organizing my thoughts and ideas here as what I'm talking about. But like, you know, I did like a post about this on Instagram, like on my stories, like the other day, just messing around, but like talking about like the difficult path that it is to be an entrepreneur, to be a creative, to go after your goals and dreams. Like, it's hard work, you know, a lot of bullshit that goes into it people don't even talk about, a lot of sacrifice. But at the same time, we do it because the payoff, and I don't mean financially, although that could be a part of it at times, but the payoff is so amazing, right? The feeling you get from dedicating yourself to things that you love and to being around people you enjoy being around, right? And to experiencing this thing called life, that makes it all worth it. And I mean, I personally have still so much I want to do in this life, and, you know, I want to travel more, and I want to challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone a bit. You know, I have like, oh, Japan's been on my bucket list, Why is it still on my bucket list, right? It's been on my bucket list for years. If I really wanted to, I could have made it a real goal and really done what I had to do to get that sorted, right? And that's what I mean. Like, we get in these modes, in these phases, right, where we're so fixated on what we're supposed to be doing that we get off track from actually living life, right? And I was gonna get into this thought of like my 20s, of like, you know, we talk about the sacrifices that you make to make your dreams come true. In retrospect, oftentimes the things that you sacrifice were not even that big of a deal at the end of the day. And sometimes they are, but like, I guess what I'm thinking about is, in my 20s, I watched as my friends went to college, graduated college, got jobs, got money, got nicer cars, got apartments, eventually got into serious relationships, got married, have had kids, all of these things, right? And I was always a few steps behind. That's putting it lightly. And at times on that journey, it would bum me out, right? I would feel lesser than, because I was a few steps behind these people. And I was watching as they got to cross the different milestones of life that society tells us are a part of adulthood, right? And not to, you know, say there's not beauty in all of those things. But I always felt lesser than as a result, or it was like, I'll show you, or let me keep my head down, right? Let me keep chipping away, keep sacrificing, keep delaying my happiness, keep delaying my gratitude until I get there. And it felt like I was losing the game of life almost, right? In those moments where I watched as they, I went to their weddings, I was there to congratulate them when they had kids, or I saw the cool car they drove, or the apartment they had while I would go back to my parents' basement. All the fun they were having, money to spend to go out. And I was struggling. And it would make me be really angry at life, angry, I think, at the present moment, angry at God. I can remember cursing at God a couple times, the universe. And that's sort of what I'm talking about when I say I wish the younger me would have appreciated the journey a little bit more. Because in retrospect, man, I personally, for me, feel like I did it the right way. I lived so much fucking life. And those memories and experiences that I created along the way, in retrospect, like those were some of the greatest moments of my life. And not to say I haven't had amazing ones since, and that I don't think life continues to get better. But I'll never be that young, that carefree, and just fucking going with it, and seeing things like that for the first time, seeing different cities, and seeing how the other half lives, essentially, right? And everything is fresh and new. I'm jaded at this point, right? It's hard to impress me. And there's something beautiful about that. And I think I'm not bummed, depressed. I'm not here to depress you if you feel like maybe your life wasn't filled with that, or maybe you did have the family life early and career earlier and didn't, take advantage of your younger years in that way. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad or anything. What I'm saying is, like, the real prize as I reflect on it all, man, is like, dude, it's not like the career milestone happening. Yeah, that feels good. But it is all that happened along the way, the accumulation of memories, moments, and experiences. Like, that is the makeup of my life and what has made it incredible and amazing. And what I need to have more gratitude towards, and recognizing that, like, one day, 10 years from now, I'll be in my 40s, looking back on my 30s and being like, man, I wish I appreciated it just a bit more. I don't, like, I that scares me to think that is probably what's going to happen. Because I feel like I've already, in my 30s, I've gotten better, but I've still kept a lot of that mindset of delaying gratification, delaying happiness, delay. And I think that'll continue to happen as you get older. When you're 90 and you're not able to move around as you once did when you were 70, you're going to look back on your 70s and be like, man, what a great time that was, when I wasn't wearing an adult diaper, right? So that's why I say, like, it doesn't matter where you are in your life and your journey, like, there's value to be had in the present moment. And I think that's so much of like what I want to strive to drive home to people. A, it's not over, but B, like, this moment matters. This is, like, what needs to be savored. And also, getting full circle to what we were talking about when we first started, the idea of, like, reflecting on how far you've come, right? I want to dive into that a bit deeper. I'll pause here to take a quick break, and then we'll get into that. All right, we are back, and I want to talk about this idea of, like, reflecting on how far you've come. And actually, I think this is a great moment right here, because I was talking about, like, all the glory days, essentially, right? But also the shitty times. If in the moment during the quote-unquote shitty times you were able to stop and say, this is fucking beautiful, bro. Yeah, this sucks. It's heavy. My emotions are all over the place. But I'm learning so much, like trial by fire right now. Right? Because, guys, like, I feel like I'm a streamer. Chat. But I watch too many TikTok clips of streamers. But, like, dude, the last year, particularly, I would say the last year for sure, like all of 2023 into part of 2024, I've had some fucking heavy moments, a lot of reflection, a lot of painful growth, a lot of fucking loneliness that was needed in order for me to find a lot of self-love and validation, internally. And it was hell. And it was like, man, nothing is good, essentially, what it felt like at times. And now I look back and I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, yeah, that part of life, that part of my journey was pretty brutal. But I'm a fucking completely different person than I was back then. In a good way. I've learned so much. I've broken so many fucking habits that were bad, toxic habits. Like, I need to be proud, right? Because it'd be easy for me to look at last year as like a loss, right? Like, man, heavy fucking year. Nothing seemed to go right. But it wasn't a loss at all. With reflection, I realized that it was probably a greater gift than like the years that I've had where everything was working. Because I sit here not perfect, not, completely healed. But a year after going through some of the lowest points of my life, I sit here as a better man, a mentally healthier man, a far more stable man mentally. And I'm not perfect. I have my moments still. But because I allowed myself to feel every emotion, to go through it all, to not numb it with bullshit, with partying, with sex, with women. But because I said to myself, we're not going to participate in escapism anymore. I had to sit with all of those heavy feelings, those dark emotions, the past traumas, everything, right? And I had to work my way through it. I had to fucking claw and dig myself out of the ditch that I found myself in. And it was brutal, and it sucked, and it hurt. And I don't wish it upon anybody, per se. But in reflection, it is the greatest gift I've ever received in my entire life. Because it forced me to face my demons, to truly look at the person in the mirror, and to address the things that were holding me back from becoming the man that I know I'm capable of being and the man that I want to be. And again, I think we're always on a healing journey. We're never healed. We're always learning and have the ability and capacity to become better. But I'm grateful for all the bullshit. Honestly, this isn't a line to, just sort of superficially inspire or motivate people. I really, truly do believe this. And I think that's why it's so important to try and be as present as humanly possible and to be grateful for every part of the journey, even the ones that on the surface look bad or genuinely feel bad. Because there's value there. There's something to be gained from it. what that gain is, it's up to you. But there's so much there. There's so much in life. And yeah, I just, in the moments where I get anxious and it still happens, or I get down on myself, like stopping like I'm doing right now. And it's happening right now, right? Sometimes honestly, I record this podcast and I think it's more for me than it is for you, like what I'm getting out of it. But like in this conversation, I feel calm. I feel at peace. I almost feel overtaken with emotion, genuinely. Because I'm really proud of myself. And the only way I'm able to feel this emotion is because I took the time to stop and reflect. And that's what I'm pushing in this conversation, and kind of what I was getting at where I started with like the Just Be Social Club, and what I wanted them to take away from their journey of the last year is like, give yourself that pat on the back. You know, things don't have to be perfect. They don't have to have worked out as you would have hoped. But every experience has given you the opportunity to learn and grow. And there's beauty in that, right? The loneliness that so many of us feel, you know, who are looking for a partner in life, right? And haven't found it. I see it all the time, like those videos on TikTok of people like just losing it, crying, or even making jokes about how brutal the dating scene is. There's value in being alone. There's value in getting to know yourself. It allows you to also become clear on what you want, who's worth your time, but also allows you to be a better partner because you know yourself and your needs and are able to articulate it far better. You know, it's like I hear, you know, from people who are raising kids, and I see it with my sister and friends, how difficult it is. But there's a reason why people choose to have another kid. There's a reason why we just haven't stopped procreating as a society, no matter the horror stories we hear about kids, right? Because as difficult as it is, raising a child, as much strain as it puts on you in every aspect of your life, the value that it brings you far exceeds all of that, right? Be it the love you receive from them, be it the joy that you get from their wins and seeing them grow into, you know, full-fledged human beings. And I think also what it does for you as a human being, right? The maturing process that happens, that is necessary to become a good parent. The level of selflessness that is needed. The level of patience that you have to learn. The hard work that you have to put in to raise this kid that pushes you beyond things that you thought you were capable of, right? All of those develop qualities and character that you can apply to other aspects of your adult life, right? The difficult moments in our lives are oftentimes the greatest gifts we can receive because they push us, right? There are so many people, you know, this is why, like, you know, oftentimes like the Nepo babies, like the kids who are born into fame or wealth, like they have a hard time recreating or just finding success like their parents because they didn't have to struggle as much. And I think in reflecting on your journey, like if you took the time to stop right now, if you've had a particularly difficult go at it, like stop for a second after this podcast finishes. Just sit wherever you are quietly thinking to yourself, like, where did I start? Where am I? And all those difficult moments, What are the lessons? If you never sat down to think about the lessons learned, do it after this podcast. Sit down and think about some particularly difficult moments in your life and what's a lesson you can learn from that, or what is a moment of growth that you could see from that, right? How did that help you evolve as a human being? There's so much beauty in that, man, and that's why the journey is the win. The journey is the fucking gift. It's not the goal, it's the journey itself, and it's the ups and downs of the journey, because you're getting something regardless of if it's a loss or a win, quote unquote. You're still receiving something from it. You're either getting a lesson or you're getting, the satisfaction of a job well done. But there's value in all of that. And yeah, I just think we got to slow down sometimes and think about how far we've come and find some gratitude and appreciation of that, and give our current self a little bit of a break from, being the hell out of ourselves unnecessarily, I think. That's a good stopping point there. And I'll kind of surmise all we talked about today, because I know it's a little bit all over the place. We'll do that in our conclusion. Still, we'll tie everything we talked about in a neat little bow.
Time for conclusion soon.
All right, so I really started this conversation with the question of, what advice would I give to my younger self? And I stand by the short answer really being, the journey is the prize. Appreciate it a little bit more. And again, not to say, especially at that point, I had to be building. I was broke. So not to say, sit back and just party all day and that's that. But allow yourself to be present to all that's happening, to the value that's being added to your life via a difficult lesson or just a fun moment with friends. Like that's the real win right there, right? Like, I'll put it in terms of the like vacation trips to my bucket list, right? Goals is Japan. So let's say I buy the ticket, I hop on the flight, and I land in Japan. Technically speaking, I've achieved my goal. But that goal is nothing if I just fly back home right afterwards, right? I go to the airport, I go straight to my gate, hop in my seat, get to the Japanese airport in Tokyo, then literally just hop back on a plane, fly back to New York. Yes, I checked going to Japan off my bucket list. Technically speaking, I was in Japan. But if I didn't have any enjoyment of the actual journey itself, then what did I really gain from it? Right? If I didn't go to the airport and knock back a couple beers before my flight, whatever you're into. When I went to Puerto Rico in January, I had like the best time. I got to the airport like slightly early after being out for a friend's birthday. I was having fucking penne vodka, delicious penne vodka at the airport, cracking a couple beers, hopped the plane, feeling good, nice and full, had a nice buzz going, passed out, woke up in Puerto Rico, and then enjoyed myself, right? That's what I'm getting at. So it's like, hey, let me have fun at the airport before my flight to Japan. Then when I actually get into Japan, I'm not just going to fly right back to New York. I'm going to actually then go off and experience the journey that is being in Japan, and for the first time, experience all that beautiful country has to offer that I can. That's the win. It's not being able to say I went to Japan and come back. It's all that happened as a result of me going to Japan, the experiences I had as a result of me stepping foot in that country. And I think that's what we have to begin to look at life through that lens a bit more. It's like, imagine like you get married just to check it off the box. What's the point? Yeah, you're no longer alone technically, and you have a spouse, right? And people aren't at Thanksgiving dinner asking you like what's wrong with you or what's going on with your dating life, right? But the reason you got married is not to just check that off the box. The reason you got married hopefully is because you love that person and you want to create experiences and memories with that person, enjoying life together. It's not about the ring, it's not about the ceremony. It's all about the journey that you go on together because you made that promise to each other of sharing a life together. And all the memories that come along with that, of being with this person, the ups and downs, right? The growth that happens as a person. Everything. And I think why I say that's my message to my younger self, because for most of my life, I've delayed happiness and satisfaction and gratitude because I told myself I would give it to myself after the next checkpoint. And that literally, like you mentioned before, is like a hamster. You just keep going. It's in a circle over and over and over again. You keep delaying, keep delaying. And that's why I would burn myself out. That's why I would be ridiculously depressed. And it was only when I would stop and reflect and be like, fuck, those are some good times. I probably should have enjoyed them a little bit more. And again, there's value in that because now I can look back and say, okay, let's not make the same mistake that we did in our 20s in our 30s. So now I can course correct and try and be more present and enjoy these moments right now. Right? Because in 10 years, I'm probably going to have a family to worry about. I'm not going to be able to just on a whim say, hey, you know what? Puerto Rico flights are looking pretty cheap next week. Let me catch a flight out of here. I'm not going to be able to just do that. Right? So there's value in this present moment. Even if it doesn't have all that I'm hoping for, even if it is not the goal that I'm striving for, there's still value to appreciate right now. Again, it's the journey. It's the unplanned parts, the planned parts, it's everything. That's where the value lies. That's where you're learning from, right? If you allow yourself to learn, that's where the experiences all come from, the value of this thing called life come from. So that's my long-winded message to my younger self. And again, I don't know where you are in your life, doesn't matter. You can apply it and use it as a learning lesson. My younger self is teaching me how to live in my 30s right now, basically, through this conversation. So that's what's on my heart today that I wanted to get off and hopefully that resonates with somebody out there right now. And by the way, it's nuanced. Your future self also wants you to work hard right now. So it's a balance, folks. You got to know where you are, right? You got to know when you're lacking and you got to, hit the gas a little bit. You're running a little bit late. You got to take some of those minutes off the GPS time. Or when you got out the house at a decent time, and you actually, get a chance to like drive the speed limit and just, take the scenic route, right? Only you can know where you are in your day, in your week, in your month, in your year, in your life. But both of those things have value and are needed at different points. Just some food for thought, if you will. Especially like, man, heavy fucking times that we're in right now. I didn't even get into like, I think that was part of why I was like, I was dragging also like, with everything with the attempted assassin. We're gonna get into this obviously for Thursday trends, but like the attempted assassination of Trump and like all the dialogue and just heaviness that it is to be living in this social media era, and we're constantly inundated with too much information and opinions and everything like that. It's like it's easy to get wrapped up in all the negative and wanting to escape. And I think that's why reflection at moments like this is a great thing. with that said, we'll get into all that on Thursday for our Thursday Trends episode. Till then, again, DM me at DJ Dramos on Instagram. I'll give you the free link to join our Just Be Social Club, the private mastermind on Patreon. Free. Just DM me. I'll give you the link. We're still soft launching it all, so I want you to be a part of that as we build out this community at justbe.nyc. If you haven't followed us on Instagram yet, I'm going heavy on that now. So yeah, that's it. I'll catch you on Thursday with a brand new episode. So then, stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Peace.